He had walked into countless rooms where people stood to greet him. This was the first time he walked into one and forgot how to breathe. Alexander Hayes wasn't supposed to be home. Not at 2:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. Not without a calendar alert or a string of assistants rehearsing his arrival. He was supposed to be in Midtown, reviewing a merger that would ripple across 4 continents. But the meeting was canceled. Unexpectedly. Uncomfortably. And instead of finding another fire to put out, of which there were always many, Alexander did something wildly uncharacteristic. He went home. No heads up to the driver. No call to the housekeeper. No executive assistant dialing ahead. He simply said, "Take me back." It was an impulse. Alexander didn't believe in that. It was more like static, a hum he couldn't shake. Something had shifted and he couldn't name it. The mansion greeted him with its usual gleam. Polished floors, curated silence. But today, that silence wasn't sterile. It was softer, lived in. There was music and laughter. He stopped in the foyer, keys still in hand, listening. It wasn't loud, not chaotic, just different. The kind of sound that didn't belong in a place like this. He followed it, past the grand staircase, down the hall where the walls were lined with art he'd never personally chosen, toward the living room. And there, on the floor, on the marble floor he paid someone handsomely to keep spotless, was his 5-year-old son. Ethan, small, pale, awkwardly crouched with one crutch supporting him and a rag in the other hand. "I can do this one," Ethan said, his voice bright with purpose. Beside him, kneeling with the same intensity, was a woman. Long dark hair tied back, sleeves rolled, scrubbing a stubborn stain near the staircase. "Okay, little warrior," she said gently. "Just don't overdo it." Alexander stood motionless in the doorway, unseen. He didn't speak. For once in his life, he didn't interrupt. "I helped for 10 minutes today," Ethan beamed. "That's 2 more than yesterday." "That's right," she smiled. "Soon you'll be scrubbing the whole mansion. Then you'll be out of a job," he joked. They both laughed. The kind of laugh that wasn't polite or cautious, but real. And that sound, his son's laugh, hit Alexander like a rogue wave. Not because it was loud, but because it had been missing for so long, he'd forgotten how it sounded. The woman looked up, saw him, froze. "Mr. Hayes," she said quickly, standing. "I didn't know you were home." "What's going on?" he asked, voice neutral but cutting. Ethan answered before she could. "We're cleaning. I'm helping. I stood for almost 5 minutes today." The woman flushed. "It's part of a routine," she said quickly. "We do some light exercises in the morning. Only if he wants to." "It's not. You've been doing physical therapy." "Not officially. I'm not certified. I used to help my brother. He was born with a condition. I learned a few things. Books, videos, trial and error. I only do it on my own time. It's not part of." "You're not trained. Not paid." "No, sir." "Then why?" She paused, and then met his eyes. "Because he deserves someone who believes he can do more than people expect. And because children remember who stood beside them when things were hard." There was no defiance in her tone, just truth, the kind that didn't need decoration. Alexander looked at Ethan again. The boy's cheeks were flushed, his brow damp with effort. His eyes sparkled with something that hadn't lived there in a long time. Pride. In himself. "I'll talk to you later," Alexander said quietly. Almost to himself. "Ethan, go change. You need to rest." The boy glanced between them, uncertain. "It's okay," the woman said gently. He obeyed, crutches clicking softly up the stairs. They were alone now. Silence stretched between them like glass. "Does he enjoy it?" Alexander asked finally. She nodded. "Very much. Sometimes he asks before I even suggest it. And the improvement? He's stronger. More confident. He doesn't cry when he falls anymore." Alexander studied her. "You're not afraid of overstepping?" She hesitated, then, "I'm afraid he'll stop trying if no one keeps believing in him." Something shifted behind his eyes. Not visibly, not to anyone else. But she saw it. "Thank you," he said. "For what, sir?" "For doing what I didn't know needed doing." She offered a quiet smile. "You've given him the world, Mr. Hayes. I'm just helping him walk through it." That night, Alexander didn't check his email. Didn't respond to his assistant's frantic texts about a postponed investor call. He stood outside Ethan's room, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, The boy's crutches were leaned neatly against the wall, his face calm. Content. The next morning, Alexander didn't leave at 6. At 7:30, he was in the kitchen. Sophia, he remembered her name now, was startled to see him. "I thought you had," she began. "I burned the first 2 pancakes," he said flatly. Ethan giggled. "He doesn't know how to flip them. I'm a CEO, not a chef." "You're the chef today," Ethan said, legs swinging beneath his chair. Sophia turned away to hide a smile. After breakfast, they walked into the garden. Sophia laid out the mat. Ethan settled onto it like a tiny knight preparing for battle. "Ready?" she asked. "Always," he said. Alexander sat on the edge of a bench, tie loosened, coffee in hand, watching. The first 15 minutes were stretches, small movements, focused breathing, praise for balance, laughter when he wobbled. Nothing dramatic, nothing miraculous, but it was real. Ethan moved with quiet determination. Sophia guided him with a coach's calm. She didn't coddle him. She didn't treat him like glass. She treated him like a boy with work to do. "Balance now," she said. "No crutches. Let's try 30 seconds. Ethan stood, trembling slightly. 1 second. 2. 10. 15. "Are you watching?" he asked. "I'm watching," Alexander replied. At 28 seconds, Ethan began to shake. At 30, he lost his balance. Sophia caught him. "I did it," he shouted, beaming. "You did," Alexander said. He rose, knelt beside the boy. "And you scared me half to death." Ethan grinned. "That means I'm strong. That means you're reckless. That means I'm brave." Alexander laughed. It was awkward and short, but it was real. Sophia said nothing. She just watched them. The distance between father and son wasn't gone, but it was shrinking, slowly, like winter giving way to spring. That night, Alexander read a bedtime story. Badly. He gave the rocket ship a stock analyst's voice. Ethan didn't seem to mind. By the end of the week, it had become a ritual. Breakfast, garden, bedtime. For most, it was ordinary. For Alexander Hayes, it was revolution. Alexander Hayes had signed contracts worth more than the GDP of small countries. He had made a life of control, defined it by numbers, clauses, and non-negotiables. But the new arrangement inside his own home had no paperwork, no closing date. And yet, it held more weight than any deal he'd ever made. Sophia was no longer just the woman who scrubbed his marble floors. She was something else, something between an ally and a revelation. She arrived earlier now, stayed longer, not because of instructions, but because she was needed, because Ethan had begun to bloom, and Alexander had begun to notice. He noticed the way Sophia knelt beside Ethan on the garden mat, never above him, always beside. He noticed the way his son spoke now, more sure of himself, more willing to try, to fail, to laugh. They were building something together, and he was only just realizing he wanted in. One evening, after Ethan had gone upstairs, one crutch, one slow, determined climb, Alexander asked Sophia to stay. They sat in the library, not the formal one used for Zoom calls with Singapore or tax strategists in Luxembourg. The smaller one, the one with the messy shelves and soft lamplight. The one Amelia used to read in. He poured them each a cup of tea, which she accepted like it was perfectly normal for a billionaire to be pouring tea at 8:15 on a Wednesday. "You never told me about your brother," he said. Her eyes dropped to her cup. "Carlos. He's 16 now, born with a club foot. We couldn't afford therapy back then. My mom worked nights. I was 12 when I started helping him. We learned on the fly. All this," he gestured vaguely. "You learned from that?" She nodded. "We made routines. Check books out from the library. When we had internet, we'd stream old rehab videos. Carlos walks now. Not perfectly, but he walks." Alexander sipped his tea, studying her. "And you?" he asked. "I clean houses. That's what was available." Her tone was flat, not bitter, just fact. "Have you ever considered studying it? Formally?" She gave a short laugh. "When? I'm up at 5. 2 buses here, 2 buses back. Homework with Carlos. Cooking, cleaning on weekends. Studying's a luxury." He didn't respond right away. Then, carefully, "What if you had the time?" She looked at him. "The money." Now she blinked. "I want to hire you. Not as staff. Not as a maid. As Ethan's coach. Companion. whatever we want to call it. And I want to sponsor your education. Certification, degree, all of it. She stared at him like he'd said something in a foreign language. It's not charity, he added quickly. It's necessity. You're doing for him what no one else could. I should have seen it sooner. Sophia looked down, then back up. Her eyes were uncertain. Mr. Hayes, I'm just the help. No, he said, voice firm. You're the hope. And just like that, the conversation was over. Not with signatures, with understanding. The next morning, over pancakes only slightly burned, he told Ethan the news. She's not going anywhere, he said. She's officially part of our team. Ethan nearly spilled his orange juice in excitement. We're a dream team, he declared. You're the superhero. Sophia's the coach. I'm the warrior. Alexander raised his mug in mock salute. To the dream team. It became a joke, then a label, then a bond. And slowly, the mansion began to shift. Sophia's duties changed. Housekeeping was reassigned. Alexander insisted the floors needed her less than Ethan did. She didn't argue. Instead, she filled her days with therapy routines, stretching sessions, snack breaks with vitamin-laced smoothies, and afternoon study sessions in the sunroom. Ethan adored every minute. He had memorized the names of every muscle she studied. He quizzed her on anatomy flashcards. He once fell asleep with a page about hamstrings pressed to his cheek. Alexander watched all of it and started tracking Ethan's mobility metrics, stride counts, balance duration, in a spreadsheet. Color-coded. For a man who had once outsourced every aspect of parenting, he now kept notes like a devoted intern. But routine, no matter how sacred, never stays safe for long. It came in the form of an envelope. Ivory cardstock, embossed lettering, a gala invitation, Dorian Investments, one of Hayes Tech's oldest partners, black tie, crystal towers, wine aerated and words rehearsed. Alexander had no interest in attending, until he saw the last line, handwritten in ink. We'd be honored if Ethan joined us. The note was from Dorian's wife. She'd met the boy once at a fundraiser and called him enchanting. He showed the card to Sophia. They want him there. Only if Ethan wants to go, she said. When asked, Ethan responded instantly. You can't break the dream team, he said. Besides, I want to show her off. Sophia blinked. Show me off. Yeah, people need to see you. It was the kind of thing no billionaire could say without causing a scandal. But from a 5-year-old, it was truth. The night of the gala arrived with all the subtlety of a Broadway opening. The car, the lights, the marble lobby polished within an inch of its life. Alexander wore navy. Sophia wore pale blue, a dress chosen by Alexander's assistant. Elegant, understated, modest. She had tried to decline. He hadn't let her. Ethan, in a tuxedo that made him look like a toy version of his father, held both their hands as they entered. Heads turned. Alexander Hayes hadn't brought a guest to a gala in years. And never like this. Whispers moved like smoke. Is she the nanny? No, too young. A therapist? A mistress? Sophia heard all of it. She had long ago learned how to listen without reacting. But she felt Ethan's hand tighten in hers. He had heard too. Don't listen, she whispered. I don't care, Ethan said. They don't know you. Alexander noticed none of it until dessert, until he looked over and saw Sophia's shoulders too straight, eyes too focused on her plate. He knew that look. She was armoring herself. Without a word, he rose, walked to the stage. No announcement, no preamble. He took the microphone. That woman you're whispering about, he said into the quiet room, has done what 2 years of paid professionals could not. She made my son believe he could walk again. Silence. She's not his nanny. She's not my employee. She is the reason he stands at all. Then he stepped down and returned to the table. Sophia sat, motionless. Why did you do that? She whispered. Because you didn't deserve the silence, he replied. And neither did he. No one whispered after that. At least, not where it could be heard. But not everyone admired from afar. 3 days later, a message arrived. Marcus Caldwell, a rival executive. More money than morals. He had a grandson with cerebral palsy. He'd heard of Sophia. Wanted her for his family. Double the salary. Full benefits. A car. Alexander saw the offer first. He said nothing. The next morning, Sophia knocked softly on his study door. I need to tell you something before you hear it elsewhere, she said. I already have, he replied. She hesitated. They offer to help my family. Carlos's school. My mom's medical bills. He nodded. It's tempting. She swallowed. But there's Ethan. She didn't need to finish. Do you want me to match it? No, she said quickly. I want to stay. I just wanted to be honest. You're not staff, he said quietly. You're part of this family. If you need more support, ask. You won't have to negotiate for your dignity here. Her eyes welled slightly. She said nothing, just nodded. That night, Alexander told Ethan about the offer. Casually. She wouldn't leave, Ethan said, unfazed. She promised. You're very sure. I know her. Like I know you. When you mean something, you mean it. Alexander stared at the boy. He had no idea when he gotten so wise. But he was right. And that scared Alexander more than any contract ever could. Because something was changing. And none of it was in writing that I in the mansion on East 82nd. Nothing looked different. The chandeliers still shimmered like they belonged to someone colder. The marbles still echoed like a cathedral. The paintings still watched from the walls, silent and expensive. But everything had changed. You just had to know where to look. Ethan's crutches now leaned against the living room window, not tucked away, but proudly visible. A shelf in the library held Sophia's anatomy textbooks, wedged between volumes on venture capital and neural networks. And Alexander Hayes, a man once defined by absence, had begun showing up. Not just physically, fully. He still worked, still signed deals, chaired meetings, controlled futures. But his mornings started with syrup and laughter, not market updates. His afternoons occasionally ended early, not for golf, but to help his son count steps. He didn't say it aloud, but he knew. He'd stopped living like a man waiting for grief to leave the room. Ethan was flourishing. His muscles were stronger, his stride more stable. He still used his crutches, but more as companions than lifelines. Sophia treated every progress chart like scripture, and Alexander watched in quiet awe as the boy who once flinched from his own shadow began meeting people's eyes. But something else was shifting too, not in Ethan, in the quiet space between his father and the woman who taught him to walk. It was subtle at first. The way Alexander noticed her voice when she spoke to Ethan, warm, patient, lightly amused. And the way it softened, just slightly, when she spoke to him. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating. The way she never sat until both he and Ethan had their plates. The way she never asked for anything. Not time, not thanks, not recognition. One evening, long after dinner dishes were cleared and Ethan had fallen asleep with a blanket shaped like a spaceship across his chest, Alexander wandered into the kitchen. Sophia was there, finishing the dishes. She could have left them for the new cleaning staff, of course. But she hadn't. You don't have to do that, he said. She glanced over her shoulder. I know. It's habit. He folded his arms. Do you ever do anything for yourself? She turned off the faucet. Rarely. There was no bitterness in her tone. Just a quiet, heavy truth. He nodded slowly. Maybe that should change. She didn't answer. But the silence between them was thick, charged in a way neither of them named. The next afternoon, Alexander handed her an envelope. I cleared your Sunday, he said. She blinked. What does that mean? It means you're off. All day. No training. I arranged coverage. Ethan agreed. Said you need time to relax your brain. His words. Sophia laughed. I don't know what to do with a whole day off. Then learn, Alexander said. A trace of amusement. Start with breakfast. Inside the envelope, a spa voucher. A small sketchbook. And one last slip of paper. She unfolded it. What's this? Art supplies, he said. You mentioned once you liked drawing before life happened. She looked up, her expression unreadable. Too much, he asked. No, she said softly. Just unexpected. He offered a rare, quiet smile. Good. You deserve at least one surprise. She went. When she returned that evening, hair loose from the steam, eyes soft with calm, Ethan ran to her like she'd been gone for a year. Did you draw anything? He asked. I did, she said, crouching down. Want to see? She handed him the sketchbook. The first page showed a pencil drawing. A small boy standing between two tall figures. One wore a cape. The other held a clipboard. Above them, a crude hand-drawn banner. The Dream Team. Ethan laughed. Alexander didn't speak, but he looked at her, and something passed between them. Not confession, not promise, just something real and unspoken. The days continued. Unremarkable, beautifully so. They moved like people who knew a boundary existed, but were gently circling it. Neither rushed, neither retreated, because sometimes the most fragile things are also the most precious. And then, inevitably, it was Ethan who crossed the line first. They were in the garden. Mid-morning, Sophia was stretching his legs when he asked, out of nowhere, "Do you love my dad?" Sophia froze. Hands paused mid-motion. "That's a big question," she said carefully. "What do you?" he insisted. She considered lying, but then smiled. "I care about him very much." Ethan squinted. "Because I think he loves you." She said nothing. "Do you love him back?" he asked again. Sophia laughed gently. "What makes you think a 5-year-old gets to be a matchmaker?" "I'm 5 3/4, he corrected, solemn. She ruffled his hair. "Some things take time." He thought for a moment. "Okay, but I think it's already time." That evening, after Ethan fell asleep, she found Alexander in the study. He was standing by the fireplace, reading a file, glasses low on his nose. "I had an interesting conversation today," she said. "Should I be worried?" "Depends. Ethan says you love me." Alexander blinked, closed the file. "He's not wrong," he said, quietly, firmly. The air in the room shifted. Softer, sharper. "I didn't plan it," he continued. "Didn't expect it. But it's true." Sophia stepped closer. "I didn't expect it either." He set the file down. "But I can't promise you normal," he said. "Not with my life. My name. The scrutiny." "I'm not afraid of your life," she said. "Only of losing what we already have." He exhaled slowly. "Then maybe we stop pretending it's less than it is." She nodded. And for the first time, they didn't speak around the thing. They stepped into it. No dramatic declarations. No sudden kiss. Just truth. Quiet. Steady. Undeniable. Something had changed. And this time, neither of them looked away. Spring came late to Manhattan. The city thawed reluctantly, as if unsure it was ready to bloom again. But on East 82nd, inside the stone and silence of Alexander Hayes' mansion, everything had already begun to change. It started, as most things had lately, with Ethan. That morning, the garden smelled of wet soil and possibility. The trees hadn't yet committed to blooming, but the grass was alive, and so was the boy at the center of it. Sophia knelt by the mat, rolling it flat. Ethan stood beside her, upright, steady, holding his crutches like trophies. Alexander sat on the bench, coffee in hand, sweater sleeves pushed up. The sweater was hideous, something Emilio once bought as a joke, but he wore it now without shame. Sophia had once teased him for it. That made him wear it more. "Today," she said gently, "we try something new." Ethan raised one eyebrow. "New like exciting, or new like scary?" "Both," she smiled. "I want you to take 3 steps." "3," he repeated wide-eyed. "Just 3. Toward your dad." Alexander blinked. "Me?" "Surprise," she said, glancing at him. Ethan hesitated, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but no catching me unless I fall." Alexander raised his hands. "Understood." Sophia set the crutches aside. "Ready?" He took a breath. Then another. 1 step. Awkward, shaky. Another. Determined. The third was more stumble than stride, but it landed. Straight into his father's arms. "I did it," Ethan shouted, laughing. "You did," Alexander said, holding him close. "And you scared me half to death again." Sophia turned away, adjusting the mat with unnecessary care. No one mentioned the tears in her eyes. It became a ritual. Every day, 1 more step. 4. Then 5. By midsummer, Ethan could cross the garden in short bursts, crutches trailing like forgotten soldiers. And people started noticing. It began with a journalist, friend of a friend, who'd heard whispers about the boy who walked and the woman who helped him. Then came a quiet feature in a Sunday magazine. Then a podcast. Then an invitation to speak at a pediatric conference in Boston. Sophia declined. "I'm not a doctor," she said. "You're something rarer," Alexander replied. "You're proof." And then, one warm July evening, the proposal came. Not the kind with spreadsheets or a legal team. The other kind. Sophia had just finished wiping chalk drawings off the patio. Ethan was inside yelling at the TV during a dinosaur documentary. Alexander stepped out, something tucked behind his back. "I thought about waiting," he said. "For what?" "For the right time." He smiled. "Then I realized this is it." He held out the ring. Platinum. Simple. Elegant. It had no story yet. That was the point. Sophia stared at it. Then at him. "Say something," he murmured. "I'm just processing." "Process later. Decide now." She laughed. "Is this how you propose to Amelia?" "No. That one involved Paris, a violinist, and a panic attack." Her eyes softened. "I'm not replacing her." "I'm not asking you to," he said. "I'm asking you to be part of what's next." She didn't say yes. She just nodded, then leaned forward and rested her head against his chest. The silence said the rest. They married quietly. No press. No spectacle. Just a garden. A short guest list. A few colleagues. 3 of Sophia's relatives who'd never been east of Jersey. Ethan walked her down the aisle. "2 crutches," he declared. "No help. I'm giving you away." Before he added, more quietly, "But you're still mine too, right?" "Always," she said. Afterward, he stood between them, arms raised. Dream team, forever. The phrase became a toast, then a tradition, then a foundation. By autumn, the Hayes Center for Pediatric Mobility opened its doors in the Bronx. Sophia ran the programs. Alexander funded the expansion. Ethan, now 6, gave the opening speech from a podium too big for him. "I used to think my legs were broken," he said into the microphone. "Now I know they were just waiting for the right kind of love." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Years passed quietly, without scandal, without tragedy. The mansion stopped echoing. It filled with noise, books, yoga mats, pancake batter, dinosaur trivia. Alexander never stopped working, but now he also packed lunches, memorized school schedules, and attended student exhibitions that made him sweat through his suit. Sophia kept studying, not because she needed a certificate, but because for her, learning was a form of gratitude, a kind of daily prayer. Ethan grew taller, still a little wobbly, still fearless, still asking impossible questions at breakfast. And one rainy afternoon, just before he turned 10, he asked his father, "Do you ever think about how it all started?" Alexander turned from the window. "I remember walking into a room," he said slowly, "and seeing you trying to scrub a floor, with a crutch in one hand and a rag in the other." "I was helping," Ethan insisted. "You were becoming," Alexander said. "And so was I." Ethan nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Then the boy disappeared down the hall, trailing water and questions. Alexander stood still, watching the rain, and whispered something into the quiet that hadn't left his lips in years. "Thank you, Amelia." Not because he missed her, though he always would, but because her absence had left space. Not a void, a doorway, through which something new had walked in. Not a replacement, a resurrection. The most ordinary mornings were the ones he cherished the most now. Alexander Hayes, once a man who scheduled sleep and filtered sunlight through boardroom windows, found himself watching steam rise from a second cup of coffee he hadn't earned, waiting for the sound of crutches on stairs. That sound used to be painful. Now it was rhythm, life, a quiet percussion that meant Ethan was up and ready for another day of being stubborn. The boy was nearly 10 now, tall for his age, still a little off balance. His legs had strength, but not predictability. His gait was awkward but proud. Sophia said his spine held the same quiet determination his father carried in his jaw. Alexander never argued. The house was still big, too big, but it no longer felt like an apology. It breathed now. It held warmth in corners that used to echo. The kitchen always smelled faintly of toast or cinnamon or the hand soap Sophia liked that smelled like grapefruit. The living room windows were smudged with fingerprints. Crayons lived in drawers that once held expensive coasters. Alexander hadn't hosted a formal dinner in 4 years. No one noticed. No one minded. There were pictures now. Not expensive portraits, but printed snapshots. Ethan's grin in the garden. Sophia asleep on the couch with a book still open. A birthday cake half collapsing in the center of the table because Alexander had tried baking without instructions. And laughter. God, there was laughter. It came from Ethan most often, but Sophia matched him. And Alexander, when he did laugh, sounded different than he used to. Less like control cracking. More like release. Like breath. There were challenges still. Of course there were. Life didn't ask permission. Ethan still had bad days. Mornings where his legs refused cooperation. Where frustration outpaced courage. He had once thrown both crutches down the hall, screamed at Sophia, and slammed the bathroom door. Alexander had followed him in. Not to scold, but to sit, on the floor, in silence. He had stayed there until the sobs slowed, and Ethan finally said it. "I just want to be normal." And Alexander had replied, gently, "You're better than that." Sophia stood in the hallway, listening. Later that night, she told Alexander that moment was one she'd remember forever. They didn't need grand milestones. Their life was built on small victories. Ethan climbing 3 stairs without help. Sophia passing an advanced anatomy exam after studying between dinner and bedtime. Alexander remembering the name of Ethan's favorite school friend before the boy had to remind him. Sophia and Alexander had married almost 5 years ago. No press, no statement, just 2 signatures and 1 promise made with eyes and breath instead of rings. They never replaced Amelia's memory. They folded it in. There was a photo of her on the piano. Not because they owed it to the past, but because Ethan sometimes sat beside it and told stories about her he'd invented from the few things he remembered. Sophia listened to them all like gospel. "I think she'd like you," Ethan had said once. Sophia smiled. "I hope so. She had a nice laugh," Ethan said. "Yours is louder." "She probably had better manners," Sophia replied. Alexander, listening from the kitchen, didn't correct either of them. He just kept pouring orange juice, eyes a little too bright. One Saturday afternoon, Sophia found Ethan sketching in the garden. He was focused, tongue peeking out of one corner of his mouth the way it did when he was deep in thought. "What are you drawing?" she asked. "A future," he said, without looking up. She crouched beside him. On the page, a building. Sleek, glass walls, green rooftops. A banner across the top. Hayes Center, Global Mobility Campus. "Wow," she whispered. "You think we're building that?" "We are," he said. "You and me and Dad." He said we could dream bigger. Sophia brushed a strand of hair from her face. "He did, didn't he?" The Hayes Center in the Bronx had doubled in size since its launch. There were now therapy pods, home visit programs, scholarships, even digital support for families abroad. Sophia ran it all. She had offers to scale it, investors, partnerships, global plans. She hadn't decided yet. Her priority was still home, still Ethan, still the garden and the mats, and the way Alexander looked when he pretended not to be watching from the kitchen window. That fall, Alexander made a decision no one saw coming. He stepped down. Officially, Hayes Tech transitioned to a new CEO, a younger man who had once shadowed Alexander like a dog chasing thunder. Investors called it a surprise. Columnists speculated it was a health issue. But when asked, Alexander simply said, "I wanted to be around for the good stuff." He kept a corner office, still advised, still pulled strings when necessary. But he spent his best hours at home. The day he handed over his title, he came home early and made spaghetti, burned the garlic bread. Ethan said it was the best meal he'd ever had. "You're just being nice," Alexander said. "No," Ethan replied. "I'm being grateful." That night, Alexander stood in the hallway, looking at the framed drawing Ethan had once made, the dream team. The pencil was faded, the figures childlike, but the banner still made him pause. Dream team forever. It had become their shorthand. When days were hard, when nerves flared, when Ethan was hospitalized last winter for a minor complication and Sophia hadn't slept for 36 hours. "Dream team," Alexander whispered, holding her hand in the waiting room. She squeezed his fingers, said nothing. They didn't need many words anymore. Spring came again, and with it, an anniversary. 5 years since Sophia had helped Ethan scrub a marble floor. 5 years since Alexander had come home early and seen his son, not as a project, not as a problem, but as a boy becoming. They didn't celebrate loudly. No cake, no press release, just breakfast, just laughter, just Alexander sitting at the table, flipping pancakes with exaggerated clumsiness, Ethan shouting, "Dad, you're doing it wrong," and Sophia sipping coffee with a smile so quiet it could have gone unnoticed. But Alexander noticed. He always noticed her now. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Alexander stepped into the garden alone. The same bench, the same trees, the same sky. Sophia joined him moments later, barefoot, cardigan draped over her shoulders. They sat in silence for a long while. Then she said, "You still think about her?" "All the time," he said. Sophia nodded. "Good. That means she mattered." "She does," he said. "So do you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never expected this," she whispered. "Neither did I." Ethan's laughter echoed faintly from the open window upstairs. "Do you ever miss the man you used to be?" she asked. He thought about it. "No," he said. "I miss the man I never let myself become. Until you." She looked at him, not with awe, but with love. The quiet, grounded kind that stays even when things get hard. Especially then, and in the darkening garden, beneath the pale shimmer of spring stars, Alexander Hayes kissed his wife, slow, certain, like a man who had once built empires and now only wanted to build breakfasts. And beside that bench, on the grass still warm from sun, Sophia whispered something back. "You saved us," she said. He shook his head. "You saved me first." And they sat there, dreamers and doers, no longer haunted by the past or frightened of the future. Just a man, a woman, and a boy who once believed he might never walk, and who now ran, unsteadily, beautifully, into whatever came next. Together.